Now, let's get analysis. We're now joined via Zoom by advocate Thipanyane from the Institute for Responsive and Accountable Governance and a member of Whistleblowers for Change and a former SAHR Commission CEO. Thank you so much, Mr. Thipanyane, for your time this afternoon. Now that the state capture inquiry has ended in South Africa, what is next? Will justice actually follow from this commission?
Good afternoon, and to your viewers. Yes, definitely. The next step now is to ensure that there is justice. Those who are corrupt are brought to book. But also, what is important though is the role of whistleblowers. That whistleblowers played a crucial role in this report as well as in exposing corruption. And going forward, it means we need to take better care of whistleblowers. They need to be better protected and supported so that we can actually continue to have more of our people coming out to whistleblow against corruption and wrongdoing, and therefore avoid the tragedy which has been exposed by the Zondo Commission report.
You raise an important point because, of course, we know that it is because of whistleblowers that we have ultimately, 4.5 years later, ended up with this commission finalizing its report and finding, of course, that indeed there was a state capture in this country. Now, you're speaking about whistleblowers, and of course, we've heard that some of them being really concerned about the delays that we saw, particularly with this last report, perhaps jeopardizing just the credibility of the actual findings and recommendations themselves. What's your thinking around that in terms of how we have basically come and how this commission has handled matters to date? Of course, we know that the amount of work and the task was massive, especially for Justice Zondo.
Well, sometimes you say, it does not really matter how it starts, it's about how it ends. So yes, the commission could have taken a shorter time, but the report is out now. It raises very important issues which we as a country should be grateful for, and therefore also help us then to basically reset our direction as a country and basically undo the bad things which has happened over the past years in terms of state capture, which has denied South Africans of lots of monies which could have been used to provide for service delivery, as well as to ensure that we have an effective and a competent government, but at the same time also upholding the rule of law. So basically, we have been damaged as a country in terms of our democracy through corruption, and therefore we really need to rebuild. So yes, despite the delays of the report and the money spent there, we're grateful for the report, and of course, we're also grateful for the role played by whistleblowers. It's now time to rebuild our country to what we want it to be.
Advocate Thipanyane, it is time to rebuild the country, but of course, as per my first question, will justice follow? Of course, this is something that whistleblowers need. This is something that South Africa needs. The report now will stay with the president for 4 months. He said then he will present it to Parliament in 4 months' time. That is October. A lot of people asking the question, will the recommendations gather dust with Parliament, or will we see some action? And also, if we do not see action, what then should citizens be doing to make sure that there is some form of accountability?
The success of the report and its recommendation will depend largely on us as citizens of this country. And I guess we from the whistleblowers movement will have to fight very hard to ensure that the recommendations around whistleblowers are indeed effective. And that's what we'll be doing. We'll put pressure on government to ensure that, this happens. But also the wider society also has a responsibility. It's our country. This is our taxes. This is the future of our children and our grandchildren. And therefore, all of us have to stand up and make sure that, what has happened never happens again. So the Zondo Commission report should not have the same outcome like other commissions before. We have to make sure that it is implemented. And I think many of us, including my own institution, will ensure that, this happens. We're also hoping that constitutional bodies like the Human Rights Commission Child Protector will also come to the party and ensure that these recommendations are indeed implemented in order for us to ensure there is justice in our country and respect for the rule of law.
One of the things that we've been cautioned against is to think that now that this commission has done its work, that corruption has ended in this country. It continues. And, one of the things that the State Capture Commission has exposed is just the gaps in some systems, particularly in SOEs, particularly in, companies that handle procurement systems. What is your thoughts in terms of how some of those gaps can be closed, so that we don't find ourselves repeatedly in the situation where corruption thrives?
The Zondo Commission is just a tip of the iceberg as far as corruption and abuse of power in our country. The agency's report has just come out now showing us the problems we're having in local government. So corruption runs very, very deep, and a lot of work has to be done to basically unroot this corruption in our country. So certainly we'll all have to work very, very hard. And secondly, the Zondo Commission focused to a large extent on public bodies. There's also massive corruption in the private sector, which also has to be looked into. And indeed, the report itself does highlight there's also a need for further investigation like in PRASA and elsewhere. So we're losing billions of rands every year over the past 25 years. So the damage is massive. So clearly a lot more has to be done. So the Zondo Commission simply provides a very small window as to what needs to be done. And we're grateful for that. But we as South Africans have to stand up and eradicate corruption from our country and our government.
I'd like us now to turn our focus on whistleblowers, because you've raised that, extensively during this interviews. How can whistleblowers be empowered and protected? I mean, just on the commission alone and itself, we've seen whistleblowers, how it's not only lost, they've not only lost their jobs and their livelihoods, but their lives changed and safety became a critical component. I mean, we've got some whistleblowers that have left the country. So it's clear and it's evident, with some whistleblowers even being killed for the information that they have, even before they approach, law enforcement agencies or go to the courts. So how can government do more to protect them?
What has happened to whistleblowers is actually very shameful in our country. Hundreds of whistleblowers have lost their jobs. Many have left the country. Many have been killed due to trying to expose corruption. And government has a responsibility to protect whistleblowers. We have an act of parliament which is meant to protect whistleblowers, and that act is not enough. And this is what the Zondo Commission is saying, that actually government must be doing more to strengthen the legal framework which protect and support the whistleblowers. And we need to ensure that actually this happens. So we in the whistleblower movement are really working hard to put pressure on government that we do need a better and a conducive environment. Because remember, without that conducive environment, you can't have whistleblowers coming out. And therefore, you can't expose corruption if we don't protect whistleblowers and also support them. And unfortunately, we have a 22-year-old act which is completely outdated.
All right. Thank you so much, Advocate Thipanyane, for that interview and also for your thoughts around, just how whistleblowers are treated in this country.